Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Thursday broadcast. We are excited to be here with you today. My name is Meryl Stewart. I am the CEO of Marketing and Business Solutions. We work with clients on helping them, put together the right message, reach the right audience, and help them raise money or increase their profits for their business. And I'm delighted to have a colleague and friend of mine, Liz Wooten-Reschke, here today with me to talk about leadership. But before we get started, let me introduce her. She is an amazing person, experienced in leadership facilitation. She's worked with nonprofit boards on governance and has over 20 years of experience in the nonprofit and public sectors. And then for over 10 years, she's provided her clients and community with really, really collaborative solutions. Liz and I have collaborated on a number of projects, which I'm always delighted to do. But it's really been a focus on, nonprofit capacity. How do we build up leaders so that they can be better leaders, not just for their organizations, but in the community? And her team work through a number of different initiatives through, retreats and focus groups and workshops and advising and facilitation and coaching and more to really help kind of round out the skills needed for leadership, especially when it comes to boards and organizations. Her company is called Connect for More, and it's just an amazing, amazing team. So welcome, Liz, to today's show to talk about empathetic leadership. And I think in light of everything that's happening in the world, it's a timely topic. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Good. Well, I wanted to remind our audience, if you have any questions as we go through this, please enter it into the comment section. I'll be monitoring that. Liz and I can kind of integrate your comments and questions as we go through this. And I wanted to start off with, kind of a definition, Liz. Really, I've heard this before, and, I think it would be great just for our audience to have a better understanding. But how do you define courageous leadership and empathy and action? I've heard those words a lot lately. So what does that mean?
Well, it's interesting because we talk about leadership from the paradigm of integrity. And it's kind of an on-running joke that integrity is a poster in our office, but not something we live in action. So when we talk about courageous leadership, it's really about choosing courage over comfort. It's about pushing into tough conversations. And it's about addressing issues, whether they're organizational or society wide, that we can, as a team, impact. And quite frankly, from the empathetic place, coming at it not from a place of power over or power better than, but having an opportunity to think about, I may not understand fully where you're coming from, but I'm willing to sit with you in the discomfort of this particular issue, and as a team member, work with you directly.
Yeah, I think that's hard for people to do sometimes. I think that a lot of us, and I know we've worked with clients and leaders in this capacity, and you and I have worked on projects together in this, but I think it's hard for us to step back and really kind of look at that within ourselves. I think anytime that we have to kind of self-scan, what we're doing, it's a bit challenging, and many people are uncomfortable with that. So how do you help, leaders? What do you kind of talk to them about, or talk with them through to kind of get them to a place where they're comfortable having that internal conversation, so that then they can practice that with their teams?
So here's the funny answer, because it's not really a place of comfort. I mean, we're really encouraging folks to lean into the discomfort. And so part of the way that we encourage both our clients and our colleagues and our team members to do that is to really kind of do, as Brene Brown says, embrace the suck, right? Like, this is going to be hard. As I tell my elementary school kids, like, we can do hard things, and we can absolutely face the hard things, but we do so together, and we do so through communication. So it's a little bit of that, of owning it, and it's also some authenticity. So I am notorious for being a very authentic leader, and saying,
that's what I love about you, though. It's everybody knows exactly where they stand with Liz.
Like it or not.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I will say, like it or not. But yes, I think, part of that also then comes to acknowledging, when I've messed up as a leader, as a parent, as a partner, to be able to say, like, look, I totally stepped into that, and I'm sorry. And I want to do better. I want to learn better, and depending on the audience, it's sometimes an opportunity to say, can you help me learn better? Can
Mhm.
you help me? And so particularly as it comes to issues of parenting in the pandemic, and certainly to anti-racism and social justice, I have been very blessed to have folks in my life, such as yourself and others, that can really cross-check me on some things,
Yeah.
and you know, it's a safe container, as it will, for me to be able to have some of those tough conversations and say, hey, I'm thinking this, or I'm thinking this, you know, what are your thoughts? And does that feel like it's coming from a place of empathy or a place of privilege? And I really want to make sure that the message is that I am an ally. I am not, you know, the person necessarily who will be doing the work, but certainly support the work of others. So it's been
Right.
an interesting challenge lately in particular.
Yeah, I think that, it is really important. And I agree with you to have kind of that cross checkpoint, right? People that you trust, people that you can hear from them what it is that as a leader or as someone in a position of power someone can say, look, stop. You either need to know more about that before you speak about it again, and you have to be willing to learn, right? You have to be willing to accept that. But someone that can kind of keep you in check. And for me, I mean, I know with our business, I have great colleagues and teammates, you being one of them, but that, when I do have something that I don't understand, or I say something that maybe wasn't the right thing, that I have a couple people that are pretty quick to say, maybe you should say it this way, or maybe you need to read this, or maybe you need to look into that. The other half of that then is me saying, great, I don't really understand this, and admitting that I need help, or that there's an opportunity to learn, there's an opportunity to get better. And I think that the more leaders are able to learn those types of skills or embrace that about themselves, the better leaders they are. And the more empathetic they are to their teams, when people come to them with similar issues, that they can deliver in a way that someone can hear it and someone can accept it and then better themselves from it. So I
Well,
think that's
absolutely.
important.
You know, and I think part of authenticity when it comes to leadership is also leaning into vulnerability.
Mhm.
You know, and I will protest, go kicking and screaming into vulnerability some days. But I think it's really important because I went through most of my life thinking that vulnerability was a weakness, and to
Mhm.
show that you didn't have it all together was not okay. And up until, you know, life events over the last decade, I really felt like there were different versions of me that I brought to the table, whether it was work Liz, mom Liz, fun Liz, or others. And, you know, kind of as I've done the research, there's really only one us. And there's really only one core set of leadership values that we operate from as individuals, whether it's personal or professional. And so part of that, again, is kind of that, for me, embracing the kind of really ugly part of vulnerability, especially from a leadership standpoint, has been, no short of life changing.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that the fact that you're willing to lean into that and to kind of deal with the parts that are really challenging and in all honesty suck, is really important, because there's a lot of people that aren't comfortable even getting to that place. So what are some things that you do? What are some tips and resources in self-care that are your go-tos? And I'd like to know, kind of what are you doing for yourself personally, and then what do you do to help your team, or your clients? What are some of those go-to elements?
Absolutely. So I will offer this disclaimer that pre-pandemic, what we were doing for self-care planning was much more extensive and comprehensive. I jokingly told a colleague this morning, over the last 3 months, my plan has gone from like a one pager to a 10 point to now it is a literal sticky note. Like, what do I have to do today to survive? So as it stands, as of today, it is singular tasking, not multitasking, giving my full attention to any one person, any one task, et cetera, which is incredibly difficult as a working mom. The other component is quality over quantity. So I think, particularly as a working parent, it's very easy for us to shame ourselves into the amount of time we're spending with our children and with our partners. And so for me, it's about, how do I give my full presence, my full attention, my full time, and what are we doing that's exciting? And so when I say quality, I still think it's authentic. So one of the things that I know I am awful at as a parent is playing dolls or doing Legos. Like my anxiety, there's something about my anxiety level that goes up having to do either of those two things. But one thing that does bring me joy is coloring. And so we actually invested in these large posters that the kids and I can color together. And it's quite therapeutic for me. I often find myself in the middle of the day saying, you guys want to color?
We do this. We do the same thing. And I have to agree with you. I don't know what it is about playing with dolls or Legos are okay. I'm okay with Legos, but I don't know, playing pretend, doing that stuff. And I listened to a TED Talk, I don't know, a number of months ago about this woman that kind of dedicated her whole year to just saying yes, including anything her kids wanted her to do that she typically would say no to because she was too busy working, and how that was life-changing for her. And every single time that I say no, I think of that TED Talk and I think, why can't I just say yes to this? But you're right. Like it has to work for both, right? So if I'm a miserable parent playing with my kid, it's not really helping the situation, on both sides. But if I find coloring, which it is therapeutic, and they have those beautiful books that you can buy with everything, but we've done that too. We actually have a whole bunch of things out on our table and a big pot of crayons. And I mean, most of the time, Jeff and I find each other, ourselves sitting there with the kids coloring. So who knew? But
well, and I think again, finding what feels good to do, but also something where you can spend that time with the kids. Like we put on some music. They're big Imagine Dragons fans, so we're listening to that, and having the opportunity to just have that quality time, even if it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes before everybody loses interest.
Right.
That's a big piece of it. But one of the things that I've tried to do over the last 10 years or so is integrate some sort of daily meditation or rest or exercise. It's gotten different over the last 6 months. I was very much a yogi and have definitely fallen off the yoga truck. But was really gracious to have my yoga studio doing virtual classes. So for a while I was doing that. They did kid yoga. So my daughter and I and my son and I would do that. Right now it's actually more of in the giving myself permission to take a nap. Even 20 minutes of listening to the Calm app. They have sleep stories.
Yeah.
That just puts me in a much better mood than I would be to just kind of, stare and bump up against the same computer wall or email abyss that is. And so just, again, kind of right-sizing my self-care over the last few months. It's really been interesting. As far as it comes from self-care tips for clients and for team members, because I actually feel like all of my team members do self-care plans. I tell them that that's part of it, but it's also about knowing that you're not alone in a resource environment. So last month was Mental Health and Wellness Awareness Month. And so it's very important for me to know that they have a team leader that really respects mental health days, respects mental wellness, and wants people to cry uncle when they need to, and vice versa as a leader, to be able to say with your own team, like, I am at my limit today for various reasons. And over the last 3 months, we've had several of those moments as team members. And it's been great to kind of tap out and, also then say, I got it. Go ahead and do what you need to do.
Right.
And I'll pick up the not necessarily the slack, but I'll pick it up and take it from here. You go do what you need to do. And so that's been great from a team standpoint. For my clients, really, really hard to work with nonprofit leaders because I don't think we are well known for taking care of each other and ourselves and our people. And so burnout is alive and well, even pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Having the opportunity to say, I don't know. It just, so many of our nonprofit leaders don't even scream uncle when they're, flailing. I have a notorious story of an executive who put off 4 years going to the dentist and ended up with excruciating pain throughout their service. And finally, the board essentially made this person take PTO. And you just think something that could have been so
easily avoided. Yeah.
And a lot of times we get so mulled over into, we've got to do the mission. And while I agree with that, I also believe that that air mask theory piece of we cannot take care of others unless we are first taking care of ourselves. So,
Right.
when you're on, this feels like a myth now, like when you're on an airplane at any point in time and they'll say, put your own air mask on before helping someone in need, whether it's a child or someone who needs some help. It is very important that we matter too. And
Right.
so, I think that's been a drum I've been beating for a while, but part of it also is right sizing the expectations, particularly for our nonprofit executives, of your expectations for yourself may not be realistic for your staff right now, whether that's those who are those employees who are participating in protest or civil justice activities, whether that is folks who are participating in the political process. I mean, well, we have to remember that self-care is very personalized,
Yeah,
and
it
what
is.
won't work for you, and vice versa. There's some commonalities, but at the end of the day, it's personal, and it absolutely is important that we don't get mulled down and, well, this works for me, so this should work for you.
I try to, one of the things you were saying is, especially in the nonprofit sector, we don't take enough breaks. I mean, many leaders don't take enough breaks, and even staff. And it is about the mission, and there's lots of people to serve, and it's kind of a never-ending cycle. But when I know that some of the CEOs that I work with, and have had as clients, when they say they're taking a vacation, like I celebrate it. I'm like, congratulations, you're finally taking some time off. And they're like, but there's so much to do. And I'm like, but it's still going to be there when you get back. And I think that part of the challenge with leadership is, I was talking to someone earlier today. It was kind of a group of people that I met up in North Florida. We were on the phone chatting, and we were talking about leadership, coincidentally. And they were saying, that part of it is taking responsibility, right? As the leader, you have to take responsibility, whether it's good or bad or whatever it is in between. Because if you don't, then your team doesn't follow. Your team has a hard time following you because you're not exhibiting the characteristics that you want them to have. You're not even following your own advice, kind of thing. But the other part was really having some humility, and being humble about what it is that you can and can't do, checking your ego, really thinking about what it is that you need for you. What do you need to have or be in order to achieve that level of leadership, where you have respect and it is authentic, and people enjoy working with you or for you. But I think that a lot of times, leaders think, well, if I just keep pushing, I just have to keep pushing, we just have to keep going, and at some point burnout sets in, and nothing good happens when you're the leader and you're burnt out, because you still have a team of people that need guidance and they're looking for direction. So I do think that, especially now, I mean, all of us have been challenged with a lot of different things. And you're right, it is personal. I mean, personally and professional worlds have collided, in many cases in households. And so, finding balance in a different way is challenging for people. Um, there is a question someone has. It says, what are the downfalls that you've seen happen when self-care does not happen? So I know,
Ooh.
especially for you, Liz, when you're working with clients, when they don't take care of themselves, what happens from a leadership perspective?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there's the dramatic part of me that wants to say, heart attacks and strokes, and it's from a physical standpoint. But from a leadership standpoint, I honestly believe there's a lot more that we internalize as leaders when we're not taking care of ourselves. I also think that we set an example as being the leaders. So, for example, we give people permission by our own permission giving to ourselves. So I know that another question has been some of the programs and resources. And so one of my favorite books related to this was The Happy, Healthy Nonprofit. And that was by Eliza Sherman and Beth Cantor. And that's actually where, quite frankly, I got the concept of self-care planning, of like, this makes sense from an individual and an organizational level. The downfalls are that you burn out physically, I've seen this personally, so I will speak to this. When I've gotten into the mode of, we'll say, high stress, I think I am performing much better than I actually am. And so when I have taken a break, or when I have forced my now notorious self-care sabbaticals, I have come back and seen that I was not quite functioning at the level that I, in my head, subjectively believed I was. So there's also that you're going to miss those simple mistakes. It's also going to create this kind of workhorse culture with your team. It also, in some cases, and it's not a guarantee, but it also demonstrates the value that you place on your own health. And so I mean that from an emotional, physical, spiritual health side of things as well, that I think that we undervalue ourselves as professionals. And especially when we're serving another mission, and it feels, especially in the nonprofit sector, you feel like you're in a mission that serves the entire community, the world, et cetera. So it's very easy to see and feel like if I take a break, I'm letting everybody down. But it really is, if you take a break, you are able and refueled to then meet the challenges ahead. And I don't think anybody could have taken a break long enough to be ready for the pandemic. But, I think what it also comes down to is, it's the lack of respect from your colleagues. It's the physical implements. And it's also kind of this, I call it the emperor's clothes mentality, right? Like you can't see, and you've kind of shut down on any sort of feedback from others, to where, you're clearly proverbially naked in the leadership standpoint, and everybody wants to tell you, but unless you're in a safe team environment for them to check you, or even your clients to say like, hey, how are you? I think that's important as well. And so there are a lot of things that can happen from a downfall standpoint, but I also believe that burnout is a process over time. Very rarely have I seen burnout go from 0 to 60. I mean, that's a crisis. Yeah. That's not burnout. So I think it's also just being mindful. And I know the concept of mindfulness it's a little bit of a bad rap. But even the opportunity to make sure that you are disconnecting from work for lunch, or you are putting your cell phone out of arm's reach, or you are deciding that for 15 minutes, you're not going to search through Facebook or social or whatever. It's really identifying what are my stress points and what can I do to manage and mitigate them. And sometimes it's work related, but sometimes not. Sometimes we just feel drawn. And particularly when we're in high stress situations, like many of us are now, it's also the opportunity we fall back into, I don't want to say bad behaviors because that's very judgy, but I personally fall back into behaviors that are more comfortable, that are typically not the best for me. And I'll blame chocolate chip cookies and wine. I think those kind of things can come in, and that's not self-care, that's numbing, and that's not the same thing.
Right. Well, and I do think that, despite where we all are, from a pandemic and our just a lot of different things that are inciting anxiety in people and challenges, that it is really important that even if you didn't have a plan before, that you can always start now, and if nothing else, like now in the middle of things that, many of us in our country or even the world have never seen, why not? Why not start a self-care plan? So I do think that it's important. I know for myself that, I get highly anxious. And when I get super stressed, my anxiety builds. And I feel like most of the time I do a pretty good job of hiding that. I don't think that most people, and people have told me this. They don't see it, right? They don't see it. I mean, I could be literally melting inside and no one knows. And part of that is, I think about from a leader perspective, it's really important to just be sensitive and empathetic to what's happening with your employees, with your teams, because you don't know. A lot of people are really good at hiding it. You would never know that they're dealing with something internally, and you could say something or do something that just sets them off. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It's just being aware of it. But I know for myself, you were saying you think that you're, operating at this amazing level, as far as working and producing whatever you need to for your clients, and you're really not. And it's kind of the same for me. I get into this like a very driven mode where I'll be doing something and the pace is just something that I know that my body and my mind aren't going to be able to keep up with. And it's going to come crashing down at some point. And I'm going to be forced to take a break if I don't integrate, those self-care tips throughout it. So I think especially when you're a business owner, you're in a leadership position, you have high levels of stress, or you're a parent and you've got the kids all day long, every single day, and there's not a whole lot of light at the end of the tunnel. I think it's important to integrate it as you go, because I know for myself, I will hit a wall and then everything has to shut down. I have to take a break. I'm forced to, because I didn't take care of myself along the way. So I know we get into routines and it's really easy to kind of forget to do things, but it is really important. So Liz, I know you said you've gone from like a self-care plan, which is fairly large, to like a tiny post-it note. So tell me about the evolution of what's happened in the last 4 months that you've gone from this like grand plan to 3 things on a post-it note, and what can people learn from that?
Sure. So one of the things that I am constantly working on is the idea of being very authentic and sharing my journey, whether that is, struggling of losing a parent, whether that's, struggling with being in a blended household, being a business owner and trying to figure out how to make money and bring other people money and make our clients prosperous. So quite frankly, a lot of it is right-sizing my own expectations. I am a detailed person by nature, and I'm a planner. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, a colleague of ours in the Sarasota community, and she said, I'm a planner and that's what I love. But, these days, like, what can you plan for? And I said, you just hit the head on why I now garden. The person who notoriously for almost the last 40 years has had the black thumb of death has taken up gardening because I love the outdoors. God bless them, but I need to get away from my family. And I need to feel productive in some way. So, for me, it was an opportunity to say, it was a very detailed plan. And actually, we have a self-care plan template on our Connect for More website as a free download. But it was like spheres of different pieces. So it was like your tech and your food and your wellness. And that's great. But in a time of crises, in a time of high stress, like, we were joking about it today, my team and I were, I was like, what is today? Like, is today literally Thursday? So it's also about like, okay, if I don't even remember what day it is, I might need to back it up a little bit and say, okay, what is realistic for where I'm at right now? And so right now, it is about having something that is visually in my face on a day-to-day basis when I open up my computer that says, hey, focus on one thing. Hey, quality over quantity. Hey, you need to rest today. Somehow you need to have some sort of moment of meditation and rest. And for me, sometimes, honestly, that ranges from yoga, that ranges from using the Calm app, that ranges from reading a book. That I believe yesterday that ranged from me lying next to my 16-year-old dog on his dog bed with him, just staring. It just
I snuggle with our dog. It's totally fine.
I mean, that's
really acceptable.
That's a form of self-care too, right? Having the ability to connect with animals and beings that won't talk back to you. So that's the parent in me speaking through. But it's the mid-level piece was more like a 10-point of like, here's what I think I can do on a weekly basis. And really, I just think as we've talked about the pandemic not really necessarily having an end in sight, and school unsureties and, business unsureties and all of these things that are kind of bubbling up. It's also like, okay, so for, today, what can I do for today? And so a few years ago, I had that mantra of like, just for today. So that's where I've gotten to the 3, that it's really, certainly we have calendars, we have plans. We're trying to work through the next week, 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, et cetera. But it's also a realistic piece to say, what we know now is what we know now. And tomorrow that could change drastically. So that's kind of the same modality that I'm working with when it comes to self-care, that it's really about, I recognize I'm in high stress. Like there is no ifs, ands, or buts. And quite frankly, my family knows that I'm in high stress, and they're in high stress too. So it's also about taking an opportunity to do what I call that pause. And sometimes that's also about saying, oh, you remember that schedule that we had and we were supposed to do. Well, done, not doing it. Or remember, like, what have we done? My kids and I, we really like to do like breakfast for dinner. We've even done some silly things of like goldfish for breakfast. I'm not proud to admit. Swimming at night in place of baths. I mean, that's just all from a parental front. But for us, it's also being able to give yourself permission to, for example, if I'm not at my best, but I've got several meetings lined up, then I also think it's about saying to those folks, either, depending on the relationship with the client or the connection, to say, look, Liz isn't feeling well, or, I'm not at my best today, and you deserve my best and you're not going to get it today.
Right.
So I need to take care of me. I will say a lot of folks in this pandemic environment have offered an incredible amount of grace to one another, which has been
it's been a nice thing to see.
Yeah, it's been really validating to see that it's in contrast with some other things, but we were humanizing ourselves and offering ourselves a lot more grace as we were going through all of the environment of the pandemic and I can't even call it e-learning, whatever homeschooling, whatever we were doing as parents, while we were trying to work from home. So I think it's a lot of grace. I think it's also, screaming uncle, calling pause before you hit the wall. There's a great analogy, and I probably got it from Oprah years ago, that, your intuition kind of starts off as a whisper, and then it starts off as a conversation, and then it's a yell, and then finally it's just a wall. And I think that really does happen when it comes to self-care and burnout and stress, right? We are all in high stress right now for various reasons. And so it's about offering yourself some more grace. But it's also about, kind of from that empathy standpoint of saying, I may not know what you're going through, but I can understand that you're going through something.
Right. Well, and I think it's asking for help. I think a lot of times leaders feel like they're the ones that should have the answers, all the time. And that's, in my opinion, that's never what makes a great leader. I mean, you can't know all the answers all the time. I mean, you should be doing something else if you know all of that. But I do think that, there is opportunity, and a lot of times we don't take it, where you can involve other people to, take the lead on something, take responsibility for something maybe they haven't done before, use it as a learning opportunity for them, use it as a skill builder for something that maybe they need further down the road, from a professional standpoint, and take a little bit of the heat off of your plate, as far as what needs to get done right now. So I think a lot of times we don't, I know for me, I just do and do and do. Someone calls, I have an answer. If I don't have the answer, I go find it. It's this constant cycle until, I either have realized, it hits me in the face, it's like, oh, you need to take a break. You need to actually take care of yourself so that you can be useful to other people. But in that process, there's opportunities that I have to be able to ask for help and engage other people to get something done. I think we take it on ourselves a lot, and especially people that are in, positions of leadership, or even board members who are on boards that, they're having to make hard decisions about the livelihood of an organization or what happens next with their own internal staffing and leadership. I think it's just important sometimes to ask for help and to acknowledge that you can't do all of it, and that's okay. It's okay. And I think when we exhibit those skills to our teams and people that, we're supervising or whatever that looks like, it teaches them that it's okay, too. Yeah. And so it's important. I mean, everybody doesn't learn and grow up and experience the same things. Everybody comes to the table with a different set of experiences, expectations, and background. And so, if you are doing something well as a leader, impart that information to someone else so that they can become better, that everybody can learn from each other, and it doesn't have to be, okay, I'm in charge and I'm the one that has to, do all of this stuff by myself, or not show weakness, or, whatever that looks like. So I think we, as a society, I think it's gotten a little bit better with mental health awareness. And I think that, we're trending in the direction of being more aware as a community and as a society that there are issues and challenges that people have. And, it's not just because they were born with something or because because someone did something. I mean, it's just, I think our environment breeds it, our environment, and the pace in which we all set expectations for ourselves and others, influences that. But, I think it's important for us to learn from each other and for that to be okay.
Well, and you raise a really good point, though, and this took me a long time to take ownership of. So I feel like this is something that I definitely want to share. We've got one of the participants mentioned something about like, how do you stop yourself from a downward spiral? Well, we are in way more control than we want to believe, right? Like cognitively, we give credit to all the good things to other forces and not spiritually or religiously bound. But like, I think we have more control over our choices and what we actually do than we give ourselves credit to. I think there are a lot of cultural and societal pressures to do and be and continue. But I also have found that when you put your foot in the sand and you say, either uncle or here are my boundaries and here's why, it also gives people permission to do that themselves. But it also very clearly says that you value the relationship so much that you want to make sure you are reserving the best part of yourself for them and not, like offloading. I mean, I know and have done that before where you're just like snapping at people because you're wound up, and so sometimes it's the opportunity to be able to say, I'm going to stop, right? That's for honestly, for me, I never thought I would be somebody who would be a proponent of meditation. I thought that was healthy. But even just to be able to sit and go, you know what? I am angry today and I am feeling this, and not even necessarily having a reason, but kind of that whole wave analogy of like, let that come in and then let that go away.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
just rather than bottling that up. And I've even found just the acknowledgement of like something as silly as saying, I am overwhelmed.
Well, and saying it out loud, saying it out loud. I mean, sometimes I have to say it out loud for it to be real. It's weird. It's a weird thing, but it's like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm tired. I'm stressed out, whatever that is. I mean, there's something that changes in how our brains conceptualize things when we actually write it down or we say it out loud. And so I find myself doing that quite a bit. In some weird way, it feels therapeutic and like a release, that it's like, okay, it's out there. I mean, I don't know. No one else knows about it, but it's out.
No, here's the cool thing. So I've been keeping journals since I was in elementary school. Mm-hmm. And when we brought a colleague of ours in for a workshop we just did last month from Resilient Retreat down in Sarasota. And she said, she's a cognitive psychologist. She said, narrative is one of the 3 ways that we take care of ourselves. And I was like, oh, that's why it feels so good to write that I'm angry at my child, or like, I'm upset that the dishes weren't in the dishwasher right. Or, I mean, again, not real things I would think that on a normal basis would ruin your day. But for whatever the reason, have you up in arms. I think one of our daily battles is the dishwasher, right? Like, who loaded the dishwasher? How was it loaded? Do I have to redo half the dishes?
Are they clean? Yeah. Are they clean or dirty? Yeah.
Yeah. These are, oh, we have a little magnet, but yes. I think again, what it comes down to is it's also about dialogue, right? It's like, does that really matter? It doesn't matter to me if the dishes are dirty. If it matters to somebody else in my household, that's important to know and to try to manage and mitigate that and be respectful of them. And I think, again, it comes down to boundaries. It comes down to what we're willing to say, like, and what is okay and what is not okay. And I think even as a leader, it's really important that we say, like, this is what's okay. This is what's not okay. I think a lot of leaders expect people to be on call and all the time. And personally, that's not okay, because I'm not going to be on call. I'm not going to be on call for everybody all the time, because I even need a pause and an opportunity, whether it's a tech break, whether it's family time, whether it's just what I call deep work time. I just need to be able to be in my own head and be creatively thinking about the business, about writing, etc.
So what are some professional empathy lessons learned that you've seen recently by businesses? What are you noticing out there?
Well, there's some lessons learned, and then there's some like what not to wear. So, um, let's think. I would say, one of the things that's interesting is those organizations that have responded in an authentic way. And so let me just give you an example of what I saw. Amidst the closures that began to start, everybody felt like they had to put out like a COVID pandemic statement.
Right.
While I think for some that's relevant, obviously school systems, et cetera. I mean, I think at some point we all got a little saturated with that and felt like, well, yes, of course, everyone is closed. What value?
We know what's happening.
We know. Thank you. So I won't say that was a miss. I think again that was people trying to control the uncontrollable and to put
Right.
something out there. What's been interesting though is the flip side of that is I've seen several organizations, whether or not they did that, that COVID announcement initially, were able to say like, we're still in business. Here is how you can help. Here, for example, our for-profit companies locally, some of the restaurants were like, order out, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's really nice to see small business owners get super creative and innovative about how we as consumers could help. And it was also really interesting to see nonprofits, particularly in their fundraising, to say, hey, we're an arts organization. We know that times are hard, but we also have several international dancers that are now stranded in our community with no place to stay. And so, really coalescing the community around either helping to provide a living stipend for those folks, really encouraging folks to offer their dollars if they can, but then at the same time saying, if you cannot continue with your sponsorship, with your tickets, with whatever the donation, we understand and we'll give you a full refund or we'll give you a credit, et cetera. I think that's been a lesson from the travel industry. Mm-hmm. There have been some companies that I think have done that really, really well and been super responsive to consumer needs. And I think there are others that, quite frankly, showed more of their panic by the way that they treated their customers in bad times then they would have been good. And we actually had I won't say it was a running joke, but it was a running dialogue about what does it say to you if we are 1 week in to the pandemic and 1 week in and really to Florida closures and they are already letting go of staff. Like, what does that say to you about the sustainability of their business model and what they were already doing? Like, that doesn't bode well. It doesn't read right. Again, there's a lot of reasons why people get furloughed and laid off and closures, et cetera. So for me, playing devil's advocate as I often do, it's a question of like, okay, so what message is that sending though? Not just to your employees and your staff, but also to your donors. So I think that's an interesting perspective from an empathy miss. Right now, I won't say we've had a second wave of empathy. I think there are a lot of folks who want to offer empathy and voice and ear to what's going on with anti-racism and the social justice sentiments, the civil unrest. But I think there are many folks, and I'll speak personally, as a business owner, I'm not sure what our company needs to say or do that's going to add value. I as a person, and even that is an interesting conversation with friends and family about, what are we seeking to do as a person, as an individual, whereas a company, kind of what we've started to do from an empathy standpoint is holding space for people. I mean, we've always been one who wants to connect people with the resources they need. And we realize very quickly on, even now, people just need to be heard. And so
people need to be heard. Sometimes you just have to stop and listen, and I think that a lot of times we don't. We assume that we know what they're going to say. We assume what the next steps should be. We assume what the message should look like. And that's our way of controlling whatever we can control because, that's what makes most people feel comfortable is that they know where they're headed and where they're going and what they're saying and what, but I think that it's kind of stepping back towards the beginning of our conversation, going into that uncomfortable space. And for many people, just listening to hear what people are saying, whether it's true opinion, whatever it might be, that they still deserve to be heard. And we have to reserve space for that. And I think that many leaders The good ones, the really good ones, listen. They listen more than they talk. They listen more than they react. They just absorb what's happening and come to some level of understanding from all parties involved to figure out what the next best, step forward is. And I think it's really important. It's not. I think it's an art. It's something that you learn. It's something that you practice. It's not something that you just, I would love it for people to just listen to us, Liz, and go, oh yeah, I can do that. And now they're amazing leaders. It's something, it takes practice. It's something you have to commit to. I also think that, from that standpoint, that when people, when leadership, and I had many supervisors that were like this, they would dictate what they wanted, right? They would tell you what to do. And it never left space for creativity. It never left space for me as a person to bring my personal talents to the table, let alone anyone else that was on the team, because you just had to follow directions. That was the expectation. So going back to, some of the things you've said about setting boundaries and setting expectations and, in listening, but also just being able to be in a space that's uncomfortable and find some level of comfort or a way forward is really important. And I think that when leaders switch their dynamic from, you need to do this because I told you to, or you need to do this because this is the direction the company is going, to a place where, look, we're looking at changing some things, and I'd like to hear what your opinion is on this. How do you feel about that? What if we did something, around this over here? Does anyone have any ideas? When you include people in the process of change, on any level, whether it's social justice or it's, changing some policies internally with an organization, people feel part of something and they want to do it. They want to help. They want to be engaged because they feel like they're part of it. So it's like a small tweak in how people communicate, but it is all about the words that people use and the tone in which they express it that will either engage people to be on board and move with them, or for people to immediately become defensive, and make it a much more difficult process, in all honesty, to get things moving.
Well, I think you hit it head on with the authentic piece too, though, is some people, some leaders are used to operating like that. And so, what I never want to encourage is this complete 180 shift, right? It's baby steps, right? And I obviously have very random popular culture, but I think of the movie of like, What About Bob, right? Like baby steps to the engagement, like baby steps
I love that.
conversation, like I hate to say that, but you think about, like, I don't expect somebody who has been able to operate in an authoritarian way to completely do a 180 right now just because things have gotten chaotic. I think however, it's about intentionality, and it's also about saying to your staff, like, what are the 3 most meaningful things to you? I see we have a question about wellness programs and check-in partners and accountability. I have seen from my own team, we have accountability partners on our team. We have, self-care modalities. We are working on an employee manual that's going to have and incorporate, paid time off for vacations, but also that will allow for volunteer time, whether that's for, civil justice work, whether that's for voting, whether, whatever the case may be, whether it's just for volunteering at your local animal shelter. Again, it is not for me as a leader to dictate what is meaningful to you as an employee. And that's one of the things that we've been really intentional about is, what is wellness for me is not wellness for another team member. So I think there's an important point there. And then you said something, and so this goes back to us having a safe environment to check each other. That you said good leader, and so I think it's really hard for us, and even now in the polarized communities that we live in, to say good people, bad people,
True.
Good leader, bad leader. I think if there is a leader who wants to get better, I think we have
they should have the space. Yeah, they should have the space to do it.
Well, and that's why I think, executive leadership groups and executive coaching and forums like that just allow executives to have a safe space to be able to say, like, I totally mess that up. Because it's not always safe to do it in your own environment, right? It's not always safe to say, yeah, I totally screwed that one up. But, the ideal to me is to be able to create an environment that it's from a creative standpoint, you're able to fail, learn from your failures, and then recover and rise a lot quicker.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point. Thanks for checking me on that.
I wouldn't be doing my job, Meryl.
I know. So I don't know that we have any other questions at the moment. Is there anything else that you want to, kind of like parting thoughts, Liz? I know we've covered a lot of different things that are really important, and I think it's been a great discussion. Are there any other things that you want to add before we wrap up?
Sure. I mean, I tend to work in threes. And so I would think the first one is to lean into those discomfortable and uncomfortable conversations, whether that's in your personal lives or professional lives. I think growth happens in that discomfort. I also encourage you to take care of yourself, whatever that means for you. It's really important that we all are taking care of ourselves. And then the third piece, and it may sound contrite, but it's take care of each other. There's been a lot of dehumanization, rhetoric, et cetera. And I think we are avoiding really tough conversations and avoiding taking care of ourselves and not recognizing that others are in strife too. And there's more connection in that than I think there is in disjointment and in destruction. I think that we have a lot more in common as humans. And so my hometown is Key West, Meryl, as you know. And so we have a wonderful slogan of we are all one human family. And so I think it's, again, making sure that we're taking care of ourselves as the human race and as human beings.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think really listening to each other, to hear what it is that we do have in common and where it is that we can improve and help each other. So I think, yeah, I know. And I know that you and I both live that, in our practice as professionals. I know many of our colleagues share that. So we will continue. There's a lot of people to help and a lot of people to be heard. So I'm happy that we're here to help with that, and that you and your team are, talking to people about this, just really important topics of conversation. It's not typically, it might be for you. I know for me, people don't call and say, I'm having a really hard time with this. Where do I go, to get help with this? It's kind of something that comes organically through a different part of the process or engagement with people, but it is so incredibly important. And it just makes us better if we're willing to accept it and listen and kind of go deep, and be okay with getting better. So I really appreciate you being on today. And I will remind everybody, if you weren't able to watch this live, or you have any additional questions, please leave them in the comment section. Liz and I will get them. We will respond to them. We're happy to do that. And for anyone that would like to see any of our previous broadcasts, we're actually uploading them on a YouTube channel. So we'll share that link in the comment section of this after this broadcast so that you can share it as well. But we're just delighted that you guys joined us today. And thank you, Liz, for being here. And we'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.